I drew a line where our rock wall design is going to go. It's very modern. Let's get started. So we just got this part framed out, and now we have this foam. We're going to use this to create our high spots. So we're going to be using this. This is a hardware cloth. It's a 1/2-inch grid, and this is going to allow us to put the concrete on that grid. So we have our mesh here. Screw this on, leaving some excess. So we're going to want to be able to roll that over. So we just mounted our mesh grid on the wall. We used screws with washers to secure it to the wood that's screwed into the studs. We wrapped it around the door frame. On the door frame, we're gonna have a nice skim coat here. So when you come off of the stone wall, it's gonna come into this room and continue. All right, so we just got this piece secured. I screwed that in. I got it into a stud here and then the bottom. We got it twisty tied. Now I'm just gonna cut off the excess. All right, and there you have it. So we got this all on there. Now we're gonna get ready to put on the concrete. So for the concrete, we're gonna be using a Quikrete sand topping mix. Now, the sand topping mix is simply cement and sand mixed together. So this is the mixture that we're gonna be using. The whole purpose of this video is to make a simple, easy to follow DIY video. We're not gonna be mixing in any additives into the concrete. We're simply gonna be using sand topping mix. So to get started, we're gonna need to add 3 liters of water. We're gonna add another 1/2 liter. We're gonna mix it up. So I'm gonna cut this open. We're gonna pour it into this tote. And we're gonna work 1 bag at a time. One of the things we're gonna be doing is we're going to dye the concrete. We're gonna be using a Quikrete liquid cement color. This is called Buff. That's the color we're going to be using. And it says 1 bottle will color 2 60-pound bags or 2 80-pound bags. So we're going to mix just a little bit of this in here. By mixing it with the water, it's gonna give us a nice even color throughout the concrete. And we're going to mix it up. So we have our second bottle here, another 2 liters. We're adding just a little bit more. I've almost used half of the dye. So we added another 1/2 liter. So that'd be 4.5 liters, which would be the absolute max that they recommend. It wasn't giving us the properties that we wanted. I wanted to have like a nice mushy consistency. With this concrete, I had to build it up a little bit. It can be pretty easy to push it through the grid. So you can see some of it behind on the grid here. It's certainly easier to have a backing. This is like right over here where the foam is. If I take a scoop and I go across it here, you can see it sticks a lot easier in that area. Going through here, we have all this backspace behind there. I think the mesh 1/2 inch right here might even be a little too much without adding the additives to the concrete anyway. There's certainly additives you could add to the concrete to make it handle this a bit better, but going across right here, I managed to get it pretty good on that shot. Up here where I don't have anything behind it, this is where the 2 mesh screens meet up. So I'm gonna go from left to right. When this dries, it's going to be much lighter, just like concrete. It looks like a mud, and then when it dries, it looks like a very light gray color. Right now, we are just doing the top over the door frame, which it's gonna drop a lot when you do this. So I'm putting the bucket right underneath there. And you wanna thin it down a little bit more. You wanna give it more of a muddy consistency. That way you can put it on nice and thin. Anytime you're doing overhead with concrete, it's gonna be messy. Raining concrete on my head. Raining concrete on my head. All right, so we have this whole section done. We're on to the last part with our first coat. But check this out right here, this whole section in this. I even got the overhead done. We got our hinges to our door, which look like they're built right into the rock. Very excited. I'm really happy with how this is looking right here. This is gorgeous. All right, so we got a small ball of concrete. I'll push it on there. Now I'm gonna touch it with my fingers and round it out a little bit. Our high spots on our rock. All right, so here we have it. The first coat is completed. Check it out. I will say I am not an expert, and this is just an at-home DIYer's opinion. You know, for 200 bucks, this is looking pretty darn good. So we just got done with our first layer. Now we're gonna start the second one using mortar mix by Quikrete instead of the sand topping mix. It'll be a little bit easier to work with. We got it mixed up in our broken tote here that I cracked with using the tool, but it works. We got it mixed up the same way with the same amount of water and the same dye we used before. Over here, we have our concrete stamps. Now, I made these concrete stamps. I got another video that's gonna be going up on these. It's gonna save you a lot of money. This is our mold release agent. This is what's going to be going on the surface of these concrete stamps, so that way it can leave the texture imprint into the concrete. We got a brush. So what I'm doing right here is I'm building up a high spot so we can have a rock that kind of comes down through here. Right now, I'm just adding some texture. The rest of the texture we're gonna be able to stamp in with our concrete rock stamps, but we're gonna let this set for a little bit. We wanna get it to where it's not completely dry, but just enough where we can push in our texture. So here we have our mold release agent. This is 2 parts isopropyl alcohol and 1 part soap. I'm gonna spray that on our mold here. That's still a little too wet, so we're gonna come back to that one. And see how I'm just going in just a little bit. I'm giving it that effect. So this spot over here doesn't look very much like rock compared to that side, the way that I laid it on here. So we're gonna put more over here. So right here, we're gonna add more of that separation effect by cutting into it. Continue this way. This is what I was going to use the knife primarily for, but this is working pretty good. So right now I'm just adding some rock texture in, and I'm just using the edge of this, allowing me to get in there. So we're going to stamp this spot right here. This is going to be the perfect way to demonstrate. Go. Now I'm going to use this brush. We're going to put in just a little bit of a brushed texture in one direction. All right, so we have most of our high points done. Now I'm going to just add some little bits, make them look like stones, round them out. We just got a couple stones sticking through our rock. Just adds a little bit more dimension to the rock wall. Now, like I said before, I am not an expert at this. This is my first rock wall. This is all about the experience of building and what you can do with very little knowledge in a certain area. Just spend a few minutes doing just a little bit of research and you can have yourself a fairly decent wall when you're done. So what I'm doing right now is I am applying a coat of Valspar semi-transparent concrete stain. I am applying that to only the high spots, which is our second layer. We're gonna let that dry for an hour or two, and then we're going to apply a second coat to the entire wall. Now this step is optional. I'm doing this because I want to darken the concrete a little bit, so that way we can show a little bit of that brown color behind it at the same time. We get to share this experience with you guys. You can either copy what we're doing or you can build upon it, put additives in your concrete, different techniques, different backing for your mesh grid. Please like and subscribe. Now in the video below, I'm going to show you how I made these rock wall concrete stamps for 40 bucks. Otherwise, you're gonna have to go online and spend $100 to $200, and I don't want you to have to do that. You just saw my cat Milton.